Mystery of the senses. A Nova miniseries with Diane Ackerman. Tonight, the sense of vision.
The light of the morning star pierces the night sky. Navajo artist Joe Ben Jr. greets the dawn, praying for beauty. Beauty before, behind, and on either side of him. Beauty all around him. The sun rises, rinsing the world with color. Joe Ben begins a new day. A painting like this takes months to create. It's a mosaic of sand, laid down grain by grain. Sand painting comes from a Navajo ritual centuries old. Traditionally, it's part of a healing ceremony. The vibrant colors come from crushed minerals and rocks. It's only light and matter, and yet a work of art sparkles in the mind of an artist. We call that interplay of sight and insight the artist's vision. We all see the world in many ways. We record the sheer spectacle of life, and we create private images in the imagination. Some mornings I walk by a river near my home in upstate New York. Light and water fill my eyes in such delicious ways as I explore the mystery of vision. But how does the rich tapestry we see come from light, our eyes, and the secret workings of the brain? We're in the heart of Navajo land, Arizona's Canyon de Chelly. This morning, Joe Ben is searching for colors for a new painting. He spent years training his eyes to read the cliffs. He's looking for veins of richly colored rock, so finely layered that he needs a telescope to help him pinpoint the right hue.
What I'm looking for is trying to locate some blue, and I located one here which is quite near the ochre color, right above the lavender. So the lavender is the main vein and the ochre above it, which will be great too. So that's what I'll do, is just head out there to where the canyon thins out and see if we can locate this.
Where Joe Ben's eye focuses on subtle detail, we see a vast landscape, the cliffs, the sky, the dark shadows. He sees a minute cavalcade of colors, picking out a vein of honey ochre above one of green sage. But despite such different visions, we all see in the same way.
Light is what allows us to see, and the biggest source of light is our local star, the sun.
No wonder we love bright days. We depend on the sun for warmth, energy, and the gift of vision.
It's light bouncing off these rocks and this running water that travels straight to my eyes. But how does the light become what my eyes are actually seeing?
Light is a very queer business. Frankly, nobody really understands it properly, and the reason is it's not like anything else. It's unique. It looks as if it's made of waves. It also looks as if it's made of particles, like little bullets. It's both particles and waves. Nothing else is like that. The second thing about light is this: although it makes us see, it activates the eye. The seeing behind the eye is completely different from the light that reaches the eye.
We call the light that reaches my eye from the sun white light. But actually, it contains the whole palette of colors. A prism sets them free. Red through orange to yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. At the Exploratory in Bristol, England, young scientists examine how light and lenses help our eyes capture an image. It's fascinating to experiment with light. Its founder is Professor Richard Gregory.
And as a matter of fact, in any optical system, light always goes, so to speak, as fast as it can. In other words, it takes the path which enables it to travel faster.
So is that what happens at the eye?
Yeah, exactly the same in the eye. The eye's got a thing like that in it, it's got a lens in it. And also the front of the eye acts as a lens as well. The bit in the middle actually changes shape. So what's happening in the eye is exactly like what is happening here. And a bulgy lens, which is thicker in the middle, bends the light, and that makes the light come together to form a focus.
Rays of light reflect off this bird as it flies into view. The light forms an image on the back of the eye. Here on the retina, it's upside down.
But the eye itself is only sensitive to 3 colors, red, green, and blue, and these are signaled to the brain, and it's the mixtures of the red and the green and the blue signal to the brain, which gives you all the colors that you can see.
It's hard to believe that the sumptuous colors of this landscape begin in the retina with just red, green, and blue. But it's in the retina where light waves are transformed into electrical signals. Instantly, these signals rush into the brain along the optic nerve. Other signals carry cues about form, depth, and motion. Color occurs as much in the mind as in the world. Joe Ben sees more than the blue sky, the green leaves, the red cliffs. To him, these canyon walls resound with stories from the past. One wall is a field of stars and an ancient sky. An elder, Annie Kahn, teaches him to see where the past and the present meet.
In the universe, we have different stars that forces our eyes so that we can see beyond the normal vision of what we see every day.
Ceremonial sand painting requires a lifetime apprenticeship. Joe Ben has studied since he was 13. It's a spiritual quest he's transformed into an art. He begins by searching for just the right morsels of color. His eyes patrol the landscape, where he searches through shadows, prospects among the rocks, and is rewarded by vast amounts of information, all channeled to the back of the brain.
Back of your eye has nerve cells that are sensitive to light. When they get struck by the light, they convert the light to nerve impulses. Those travel back into your brain until they finally get to the cortex. Okay? The cortex, they then travel forward. So the first place the light is processed is in the back of your brain. So if you get hit in the back of the head, you may see stars. Then travels forward and is separated into several different pathways which do different kinds of things. So vision is not one thing.
In fact, vision consists of at least 4 distinct elements: color, motion, form, and depth. From the reversed image in the retina, the eye's light-sensitive cells separate these components and send them rushing back into the brain. Billions of these signals meet at the back of the brain in a place called the primary visual cortex. Motion and depth are processed here. Color and form in these areas. 1/3 of the brain is devoted to processing what we see. In the end, the brain somehow creates a single perception, but it is a mystery how. As Joe Ben continues his search for pigments, we can see other elements of vision at work. We detect motion first, and the brain is quick to pick it up in black and white. We may see the world in color, but our brain actually processes motion in black and white. If danger is stalking you, there's no time for the luxury of color. Another pathway in the brain handles shape or form. Behind Joe Ben, the form of Shiprock Mountain cuts across the sky. Its jagged outline seizes our attention. Despite all the pageantry of light, shade, and color, form rules this scene. You can see the interplay of form and color when you look at this lovely watercolor by Picasso. The color seems to cling to the contour Picasso has drawn. But when you take the outline away, it's hard to make sense of the picture at all. Here, form is easier to interpret than color. Another aspect of vision is the perception of depth. Did you ever wonder why we have 2 eyes? Joe Ben is digging a hole in the ground to gather the fine desert sand he needs for his painting. His brain brings together 2 different images, one from each eye, blending them so that he perceives the world in 3-dimensional space. But there are other ways of judging depth. As Joe Ben moves away, his eyes adjust to distance. Here, a plant seems huge because it's close. The mountain small because it's far away. This is what's called perspective, and artists use it to convey a feeling of distance. In this drawing, the back line, the line in the distance, seems much larger. But as we move them, we see the two lines are exactly the same size. We can be fooled by perspective, so we need additional evidence to make our way in the world. Shading is another clue that gives us information about depth or distance. It's the shading on these rocks that gives them depth. Here, in the shadow of the sacred mountain of Shiprock, Joe Ben returns from his day's expedition. His truck is filled with colored rocks that he has collected throughout Navajo land. He spreads a canvas of earth tones, finely textured sand typical of this region.
The collection of my material is where I've traveled, but majority of my material is from this area in the southwest. These material came to be this color or this texture or hardness or softness by natural phenomena, natural happenings as far as heating, pressure, cooling. And through these natural processes, they stored these energies. And due to these stored energies, we are able to perceive color in them. We are able to feel texture in them. And a lot of times you are able even to taste. And some material have odor to it.
As an artist, Joe Ben uses all his 5 senses to sift through his materials and begin to create. Eyes are the great monopolists of the senses, but they do far more than just witness and record. We see everything in a halo of meaning.
Forming an image does you no biological good. That's not perception. Perception is extracting meaning from the image. Although it feels like you've just got a picture, you're really doing much more than that. That's what fooled computer vision people for so long. They thought it would be trivial to make a machine that could see. It turned out to be almost impossible. It's taken them decades to get a machine that can drive along a road and not drive off of it, because it turns out that seeing is much more than we thought it was. It isn't just a high-quality image.
As you're moving about the world, you're not just seeing patches of color and texture, you're seeing objects. The world's meaningful. When we talk about meaningfulness, what we're really talking about is your ability to enter memory from previous encounters with objects and identify that something you're seeing now that's red in a certain shape and a certain size, in fact, corresponds to something you saw before that you've got stored in memory. As soon as you do that, it's no longer just a red, round thing of a certain size, it's an apple. And you know it's got seeds inside even though you can't see them. The reason that you know it's got seeds inside even though you can't see them right now is because in memory, you've got stored information about things like that that you learned at previous times you encountered them.
So if you think about, say, recognizing my face, if you just take a picture of my face, and then you've got a memory of my face somewhere in your memory bank, and what you want to do is know if what you're looking at is the same as what you remember. What are the important parts of this image that you're looking at?
Few sights mean more to us than the face of a loved one. But what happens when that meaning is lost? 4 years ago, Robert Brodston of Montezuma, Iowa, had a stroke. His eyes are fine, but his brain is damaged. He can see faces, but he can't recognize them.
Faces to me of my grandchildren all look very similar, and I have a hard time of telling them apart. I tell them by their hair, and also If they talk just a little bit, why, I know them by their voice. That's what I go by, is voice, more than anything.
Okay, Bob, we're going to look at some pictures here. These are pictures of people's faces. Some of them you know, some of them you may not.
Looks familiar, but I don't know who it is.
So you think it's somebody you might know?
Yes, I think it might be.
But you can't identify.
I can't,
Do you have a guess?
It kind of looks like my wife in earlier days.
As this examination reveals, he can barely recognize the face of his wife, his partner for 48 years.
Yes, I think it could be.
Okay. Let's try another one.
And we're going to give you an idea of what kind of process
Doctors Antonio and Hannah Damasio are trying to understand the problems of patients like Robert Brodston.
Our patient. Now that we have seen that this patient has difficulty in the recognition of faces, it's very important to see how the brain is in this particular patient. And we're looking here at a series of reconstructions of the patient's brain that are performed with a new technology that allows us to look at the human brain, the living human brain, in 3 dimensions. Now, when you look at the external views, the outside view of the brain, you don't actually see any sign of damage. It's perfectly intact. However, when you now split the brain and look at the internal view of both the right and the left hemispheres, we see 2 areas that are the areas of damage. Those are the areas that were impaired by the strokes that this patient had. And it is because of these areas that the patient has a problem with the recognition of faces.
These damaged areas make it hard to remember certain information.
Do you recognize this one?
I have seen that picture, that face, but I don't know who. I can't put a name with it.
A few deeply embedded facial memories survive, but faces newly encountered are much more difficult to recall.
Do you recognize this person?
Yes, that is a picture of my mother. That... I can't... that face looks familiar, but I can't tell you who it is.
His grandchildren are very hard to identify.
It about halfway looks like one of my grandsons.
What could be more important than recognizing the people we love and are loved by?
I'm not sure who it is. Well, doggone, you know, you would feel bad if you can't recognize your grandson. Anybody would feel bad about it.
Faces are usually the first thing we notice about people, and faces change.
Oh, here's my first face. I was less than a year old, and I look so excited and so tentative. My brother seems to be having a good time, though. I love this picture of me with the little chipmunk cheeks, and I have such a worried expression on my face.
Seeing these faces brings back so many memories.
There's a picture of me in junior high school when it was in fashion to wear headbands. And with my mom in Spain. I was wearing a mini skirt. She had her hair teased up in a beehive. I don't remember when this picture was taken, but I seem to have such a soulful look on my face. I just know it was in college. I think of this as my Loretta Young look. Here I am with some women friends down at the farmer's market.
Images like these stop the rush of life for a moment, so we can glimpse ourselves and all the people we cherish. But sometimes vision can be fooled. Do you see a vase or two faces? Our brain switches between the two. Here, our eyes struggle to focus, and so we experience a pulsing sensation. Look at this figure. Do you see a box? What about now? There's a visual trick at work here, an optical illusion.
It's quite difficult to define an illusion. Basically, it's an error. It's some kind of discrepancy from the truth. But the difficulty is we don't always know exactly what the truth is, and when you call it an illusion, it really means that it's disturbing, it's upsetting, it makes your behavior go wrong. But if you're an artist having a lot of fun with illusions, then they're just great. You use them, you know, usefully. So the definition is really not simple.
In this etching, which way is up and which way is down? We experience up and down all at once. Escher's art both puzzles and delights us. And that's what makes illusions fun. They enchant and confound at the same time. Sometimes art plays with our sense of reality. Artist Roy Lichtenstein, founding member of the pop art movement, celebrates everyday items, blowing them up so that you can see the dots of the printing press.
I was leafing through a book full of Roy Lichtenstein prints, and I came across this one, and it was in the middle of a series called Monet's Cathedral.
Here's how the French Impressionist painter Monet portrayed a cathedral at Rouen. Here's Lichtenstein's version of Monet's painting.
If you look at this, it doesn't look much like Monet's Cathedral until you introduce, using a filter, a luminance contrast between the red and the blue. And then suddenly it jumps out at you. So you don't see the shape until you introduce a luminance contrast.
Monet captures a world of sensations where colors seep together like separate moments. Marge Livingston views art through the eyes of a scientist. But how does Roy Lichtenstein see his own work? As a young man, he fell in love with Monet's art.
The Monet things, of course, were seen through French eyes, European eyes, however you want to put it, School of Paris, that had certain paint qualities.
He learned to paint like the French masters, but in time he radically changed his style. He took his love of comic book images, images coming from the printing press made with dots, and the dots became his signature.
I did recognize that putting dots next to flat areas was somewhat akin to putting thick and thin paint on. It was that I really thought you could use these elements that was in the tradition of painting, a kind of painting everyone was used to and was elegant and beautiful, but it just became less and less important. That everyone could do this now. It wasn't discovering anything, it was simply repeating a kind of beauty that we were taught.
Lichtenstein sees the world as a field of dots. For him, beauty balances somewhere between the visible whole and its nearly invisible parts. Joe Ben also draws upon his culture in powerful ways. He creates two kinds of sand paintings, public ones for exhibition and traditional sand paintings that are secret. As if emptying an hourglass, he pours the sands of time, nature, all creation. Adopting the techniques of his Navajo ancestors, he blends the past with the present.
when you create a sand painting, you recreate your natural surroundings, your landmarks. You also create, through your mythology, how you came to existence, how you came to be. You also create time, place, and you also create the universe in this.
Artists share their unique vision of the world by making the ordinary seem newly discovered and the extraordinary familiar and inviting. Joe Ben's artistry is rooted in his sense of color. For him, colors have great meaning that can be traced to the history and tradition of his people.
The color that I'm working with now, I collected it a couple days ago, and what I tried to do is reconstruct your surrounding in this painting. And this particular color is from the West. To me, it was important to utilize material from this area, the color collected from the West, and also in the area of Canyon de Chelly, which is a place with a lot of petroglyphs and pictographs. This is the same material that a lot of Navajos used in their work years ago. Realizing the source should be quite near, I scanned the sides of the canyons. And when I did this, I saw some veins. And studying the veins, I was lucky enough to find it. The colors that we see here, there's 4 colors, white, blue, the yellow, and the black. They symbolize or represent several things. The most important is the cycle of the day and also direction. The white representing dawn, the east. The blue representing day, the south. Yellow representing evening, the west. And black representing night, north.
For Joe Ben, color is a way to convey a sense of place and time. Like him, we all see through the many lenses of our culture, personality, and upbringing. This is a dance contest at the annual Shiprock Navajo Nations Fair. There are over 210,000 Diné or Navajo people, proudly rooted in land, clans, and traditions. The Navajo culture dances in Joe Ben's art.
When I see the pictographs and petroglyphs of Navajo, what was this person expressing here? as a culture, as a society, as a human being. Questions that artists raised hundreds and thousands of years ago. We ask those same questions, but in a different form, a different language. To me, the strength of art is to express and to explore yourself for your self-understanding. Explore the cosmos and look at that.
Joe Ben is on a pilgrimage of discovery, asking questions. Questions about himself and his world, in a private language of sand and color. But there is something more, imagination.
Aren't these beautiful flowers? They remind me of being 16, one summer that I spent in the Poconos. Every visual image is a tripwire for the emotions. Just look at a carpet of green grass. I bet you can remember exactly what cut grass smells like, how it leaves stains on your blue jeans, how cool and damp and smooth it feels to walk across grass, and what it's like to roll in tall grass on a hot, breezy summer day.
That's imagination, the ability to present to the senses what's not really there.
You can think of the back of the brain as if it's sort of like a TV screen. In perception, you got a camera. So camera's aimed at something that's outside, comes in, it's registered, screen. Imagery, it's like there's a videotape recorder. So the camera's not working, it's not picking up what's outside. Rather, something you've seen previously is sort of getting replayed. But once it's replayed, you sort of see it again, and you can notice things you've never seen before, you didn't pay attention to before.
Of course, there's no screen in the head or cameras recording images. So how do perception and imagery, or as we say, seeing and imagining, operate in the brain?
Okay, we're going to be putting a mask on your face. All right. It's going to be rather tight, and it's very important that you try and not move while we're taking the images.
Now I know what an armadillo feels like.
Dr. Steve Koslin designed a PET scan experiment to find out what happens in the brain when our eyes actually record an object and what happens when we simply imagine the same object.
That's good. I'm just going to install the monitor.
I'm at the Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston to participate in Steve Koslin's experiment and to view my brain at work. Positron emission tomography, a PET scan, measures the blood flow during mental activity. It's a good way to find out what the different areas of the brain are doing.
Okay, I'm just going to put on a set of nasal cannula. This is what you'll breathe in the radioactivity with. And during this test, I'd like you to breathe in through your nose. And if these come off, I want you to let me know.
Okay.
And this sort of looks like an oxygen mask, but it's actually a vacuum that pulls the radioactivity.
Radioactive gas is used in tiny amounts to trace the flow of blood in the brain. It's not dangerous, and it helps scientists understand what's going on.
How does that feel?
Interesting.
Is it comfortable enough for you?
Yes, it's just fine.
Okay. Okay, so during this experiment, you're going to be hearing names of common objects that are going to be called out by the computer. I want you to keep your eyes closed and visualize these objects in your mind's eye. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
In the second part of the experiment, you'll actually be presented with these objects on the screen. So I want you to open your eyes and look at the screen. And you'll also hear names of objects called out, and these objects will be presented to you. You'll actually see them.
Okay.
In the first part of the experiment, I'm told to close my eyes and imagine certain objects. Once I visualize an object, I press a foot pedal to let the computer know.
Teddy bear. Knife. Cake. Cushion. Car. Beanbag. Doll.
In the second part of the experiment, the computer tells me the name of an object and shows me a picture. As soon as I see it, I press the foot pedal.
apple, doll, knife, cake,
This experiment is making me very curious.
railroad
Can
track,
my brain tell the difference between a real object and an imagined one?
car,
The next day, Nate Alpert and Steve Koslin went over their findings with me.
I see. Steve, what does this mean?
Okay, up here we've got the slice through a brain. It's showing the activity in the brains when people are doing different things. And the top one is the activity that you see during mental imagery, when you're actually not seeing something, you're supplying it in your own mind. And the bottom is what you see when you're seeing it.
Red indicates the greatest blood flow or brain activity, and yellow is next. Blue means inactivity.
So the first thing that I think you should get out of these images is how similar these look. The same kinds of activities are occurring in your brain when you're visualizing something. It's not really there, you're visualizing it, as when you're actually seeing it. The second thing that I think is important to get out of these images is you'll notice it's not just one place that's lit up. There's a whole configuration of activity in both cases, in both imagery and perception. That is, each of these mental activities is not just a single undifferentiated entity. There are actually a lot of separate things that are going on and working together in your brain when you're either perceiving or visualizing. So we've been talking about vision as if it's a camera that projects onto a screen, and mental imagery as if it's a tape that gets played, videotape forming an image. But that's really too simple. It turns out that even during vision, you're getting information from memory, imagery-like information coming backwards and filling in what you're not actually seeing, fleshing out what you've glanced at.
See the hand and imagine the apple. See the apple and imagine the hand. Imagination, or imagery as Steve Koslin calls it, fills in what we cannot see but know must be there.
So the line between imagining and seeing isn't so sharp. The brain is very active. We're very much active viewers. We're not just passively sitting and registering what's coming in our eyes. We're actively anticipating and filling out what we expect to see and what we know about the world, and using that to fill in what we're actually seeing.
Each of us has a unique way of seeing the world. A special blend of vision and imagination. Our own private museum of curiosities. In 1989, the French government decided on an innovative use of a 16th century chateau in the Loire Valley. They turned this ancient castle into an art museum, placing art from Africa, the Americas, Asia, and Europe beside the castle's original collection of Renaissance art. Today, classical art hangs alongside the latest in contemporary art. Here is a ceremonial dance mask from Nigeria. The history and spirits of the Igbo traditions highlight both the dance and the dancer. Every room is a celebration of the ways that artists stimulate our senses. An early owner of the chateau was in charge of the horses that Louis XIV used to fight his many wars. This is his war council room. In 1993, an Italian artist added a modern twist by creating sculptures using artifacts from past wars. This is the artistic imagination at work. It may not be your private vision or mine, but what would happen if we let our imaginations run wild?
You can replay something you've seen, an apple or whatever, or you can modify them, not just by rotating them, but you can put them together in combinations you've never seen before. So you can imagine your mother on a surfboard, for example. How do you do that? Well, you know what a surfboard looks like, so you can visualize that. You know what your mother looks like, so you can visualize her. You also know what on corresponds to. So there's a very active process that involves an enormous amount of the brain, where you synthesize two different memories, creatively putting them together, and then seeing what things look like. So once you've got your mother on the surfboard, you can answer questions like, if she stuck her arms out, would they extend over the front of the surfboard? Okay, putting the two together. Okay, so imagery involves a creative process of amalgamating things that you've seen before in new ways, not just a simple playback.
Here artists combine familiar objects in fresh, new ways. An artist from Bosnia brings to life a mythical French war, which he called the Pitchfork War, where farmers rebel against the aristocracy. The farmers become pitchforks thrust into the walls, and the wealthy landowners are reduced to arrogant, disdainful portraits. One English artist doesn't use paint at all. He uses wine, a light bulb, and antique glass. He places real objects on a real table in a way that highlights the beauty of simple things. These papier-mâché monsters come from Mexico.
When an artist imagines something, to the artist it is as real a fact as the sun. Then we look at the artwork, and on some level we understand that what we're seeing isn't real, but our brains process the information as if it were real. And so we're transported to the world the artist lives in. We feel the emotion. We enter that creation.
The 20th century artist, René Magritte, wanted to shock us into seeing the world in a whole new way. Visible things can be invisible, he said. The rider hides the trees, and the trees hide her. The invisible is that which light cannot throw light on. Artists help us unlock doors to unseen worlds, worlds within and beyond ourselves, sometimes worlds of long ago.
I saw pictographs and petroglyphs that was done hundreds and some thousands of years ago.
One particular petroglyph was very simple. It was 5 concentric circles with a path to the center. Joe Bann incorporates this symbol into a new sand painting that will represent the cycle of human life. The white is our youth, the dawn. Blue stands for day, the middle years of our life. Then yellow, the color of autumn and maturity. Finally, we head north into the black of night, old age and death.
So that is what it is here. the path, again from the center, development of one's consciousness, and the path through development of consciousness there, to the south, the west, and to the north.
In the Navajo language, there is no word for artist.
There are people who play this role, but they are not called artists. They're medicine men or spiritual people who will be able to venture and to vision, to look at their culture, to look at other cultures, interpret and reflect that back to the people. That is the role of an artist.
Traditionally, sand paintings are done for healing. A sand painter creates stylized symbols to address a patient's imbalance with nature. During the healing ceremony, the patient sits on the sand painting to restore that balance. Joe Ben turns these symbols into art, ever mindful of their spiritual origins.
Okay, it is completed. The work is completed. I will put it away now. And the order to be putting it away will be from the east to the south, the west, and the north. So the color from the east, color from the south, from the west, and color from the north.
What Western culture considers destruction, the Navajo culture sees as regeneration. All the energies from this sand painting go back into the earth to be reclaimed. Our world becomes its richest when we take it in through our eyes, but we savor the world's beauty with all our senses. However much we may understand, the senses stay cloaked in mystery. They began in mystery, and they will end in mystery. But what a wild and beautiful country lies in between.
Mystery of the Senses was produced by WETA Washington and WGBH Boston, which are solely responsible for its content. A production of WGBH Boston and WETA Washington.
This is PBS.